Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to thank you for joining our webinar today. IBM Cognos Analytics with guest speaker Michael Peter from IBM. The webinar is supposed to start at 1 o'clock, so we'll probably give it 1 or 2 minutes for people to finish joining, and then we'll start. Again, thank you very much for attending. We really appreciate it.
Still trying to figure it out.
Muted.
Again, I'd like to thank everybody for attending our webinar today, IBM Cognos Analytics. And again, we're going to start here in just another second or two. Okay, everyone, I think we're ready to begin. Again, thank you very much for attending today. My name is Mark Martina. I'm a system architect with TechD, an IBM Premier Business Partner. And I'd like to introduce you to Michael Peter. He's an offering manager with IBM, an expert with Cognos Analytics, and he's going to review some of the newer features that are out and some ones that are going to be coming out. So with that, Michael.
Thanks, Mark, and welcome, everyone. So to further the introduction a little bit, just to background on myself, as Mark said, I'm an offering manager with the IBM Analytics team, focusing in on Cognos Analytics and our planning analytics products. My history goes back with Cognos for over 20 years, so I've got a lengthy experience with the product and have been able to watch it over its evolution over the past couple decades. And frankly, this is one of the most exciting releases we've ever had. The 11.1 release came out last fall and really introduced some different approaches to analytics, primarily focused at the business user. And what I want to do today is help orient you, not just on simply the, we can do this and we can do that, here's this new feature. It's more about why did we do this and what did we do differently to address some of the issues that we saw happening in the marketplace. And that's kind of where I want to start the discussion here, because there's a study that we worked with recently that came out with this result. And just reading it here, it's, almost 99% of the firms saying that they're trying to become insights driven, but only a third are being successful. And there's a couple things that are really, I think, interesting about this statement. First of all, if you think about all the effort that has been put into self-service BI and all of the tools that are out there and all the new companies and startups and this product and that product, the fact that we've really not made any progress in addressing this goal is kind of interesting. Because frankly, I think I could take this quote and use it 20 years ago and it would still be accurate. I mean, when I started with Cognos back then, this was the goal. Everybody wanted to get more data driven, more insights into what was happening, what was, what kind of decisions can they make on that. But the challenge was it wasn't working, and that's kind of where Cognos built a lot of the success early on in addressing that need, but still lots of hurdles. So the evolution continues, and what we're seeing now as sort of the hurdles that need to be addressed are twofold. First of all, it goes straight to that release of all these self-service tools. There's been an explosion of expectation in the business community that, if I've got a dashboard or I've got the ability to create a dashboard for myself and I've got some data, then I should be able to get an answer. And yes, you can get answers. You can get very beautiful answers that when presented to your management wow, and chances are they're going to believe it. But the question is it right? Are those answers correct, misleading? Are they the best answers is another thing, because just because you have an answer doesn't mean it's the best answer. And all of these things go back to the fact that business users, while they know their business very well and are no doubt capable of reading reports and reading dashboards and stuff, when you get into actual analytics and trying to understand what it means to do data analysis, not everybody's capable of that. It's not meant to disparage anybody, but it's a reality that the whole explosion in the need of data scientists is driven by the fact that data analysis is a skill that takes learning and aptitudes to do the sort of things that are necessary. It's much more than just putting a chart on a dashboard. Now, the second side of this deals with the data itself, but it's connected, because as I mentioned, a lot of times now we're able to find data sets outside of those sanctioned by IT or the organization that I want to bring into the analysis, but I may not know how. And just because I can do it, again, doesn't mean that it's going to give us the right answers. And it goes back to that limitation of the person trying to use it, coupled with this growth of the data that is available to them. So as we're looked at Cognos Analytics and moved it to the next generation from what established itself as one of the best enterprise reporting and environments out there, to how do we address that newer need for self-service, but do it appropriately. We started with 11.0 a couple years ago, and that was the first one that really brought self-service dashboards into the product and made a lot of headway. But these problems that I just mentioned were still there. So the answer today, and what we really introduced in the past 6 months, is 11.1, and we do it with AI. We address the problem with AI. Now, AI in this context, AI, artificial intelligence, is a standard term that people associate with that. But we also like to use the term augmented intelligence, because we see the AI taking two facets. One, on the artificial intelligence side, is how do we apply machine learning and predictive models and things like that will drive, that's traditional AI type of stuff that will help deliver information out for the user in ways that they don't have to go dig for it or build the models themselves. It's pretty much automatic. But from an augmented standpoint, the idea is how can we make this system easier for the end user to do the things that they need to do and understand what the data is telling them. So some of the examples you see here, like natural language dialogue, not only do we give you the ability to ask the questions in natural language, but we intersect that with the predictive models and the machine learning such that the answers that it's giving back have additional context in natural language so you can understand better what it's talking about. I'm going to be getting into a demo in a bit, and you'll see some examples of all the things you see listed on the screen here and how we've applied AI to Cognos Analytics, really infusing it through the entire product to make it really the smartest business intelligence tool out there. And I think that stems from the fact that we didn't just create a new product. We took what was, again, arguably the best foundational BI platform out there and extended it through all of this AI capabilities, again, to make things simple, to give you those insights, but still importantly, to make sure this is not just a person doing analysis. How do we translate that into the business so that it can be propagated in ways that affects the operation, and absolute must is it's got to be trusted. That's one of the mantras about Cognos Analytics. It's always been there, is that all of this self-service is great, but if you can't trust the data that you're doing it on, then it's really questionable as to the value of it. So as we look at the specific areas of Cognos Analytics that where we've applied the AI, there's 3 areas we'd like to talk about. First is the concept of preparing the data. Now, I'm guessing that some of the people on the phone probably have used Cognos before, maybe for quite some time, and you're familiar with the traditional approach of Framework Manager and what admittedly is a pretty heavy, albeit very capable metadata modeling environment that was the foundation of how the product worked. We recognized in 11.0 that we wanted to make that more accessible to the end user that needed to do some basic modeling, but also help out for the IT that didn't necessarily need to go to the full capabilities of Framework Manager, but they needed to have something that was more governed. So we introduced data modules, and in 11.1 last fall, we introduced AI to data modules. And what that has allowed us to do is to really jump forward the ability for the end user to do a lot of the data preparation that is necessary for analysis. A lot of times people talk about 80% of the time for data analysis is spent in data preparation. So we wanted to see how we can condense that and make more time available for the analysis itself. And so you'll see as we go into the demonstration how immediately as data is brought into the product, it will start analyzing it and capturing information. And I say analyze, the machine learning models and the predictive models are doing the analysis automatically and storing away in the environment all the things it needs to help that end user. In addition, right within data modules, the ability to do some really nice cleansing capabilities and deduping and just all kinds of data manipulation that typically would be relied on or require IT involvement. The end user can do it now because, again, it's assisted through that AI. The analyze step, and this is where we're going to spend most of the time today. You're going to see me, as we go to the demonstration, I'm going to start with the dashboard, but for a purpose, because what I've been trying to introduce to a lot of people in these sessions is that dashboards are not really good for analysis. They're great for presentation. And it's become sort of the de facto standard for how people approach data in today's BI world, but they're really not that great for analysis because you're focused in on how do I work within the confines of this presentation layer rather than digging into the data itself, and more importantly, how can the tool guide you through that process and help you uncover things that you really didn't think to ask? One of the things we talk about with dashboards is the idea of bias and confirmation bias in particular. And what that means is if I'm sitting down as a business user to create a dashboard for the purposes of data analysis, the first thing that's going to happen is I'm going to put in that dashboard what I believe is the most likely answers or sources of the issue that I'm trying to understand. The problem with that is, yes, you may find some things, but as soon as you find something that addresses or confirms that bias, you're likely going to stop because you feel you've answered your question. We want to go beyond that. We want the bias to be eliminated such that the tool itself can expose to the end user things that they didn't think of, may never have asked, but may be actually more important and more impactful than what the user came to the table with in terms of that bias. But lastly, the idea of creating and sharing. I don't want to minimize dashboards at all, because the ability to deliver out those results through an interactive dashboard that can help the entire organization understand what's going on, that absolutely is the way the information is often delivered these days. But recognizing this is Cognos, we still have the ability to create those pixel perfect reports as well. And we don't ever want to minimize the value of that. We've heard from our customers constantly that that ability is still critical. Dashboards are absolutely needed, but the ability to do pixel perfect, manage reportings with scheduling and things like that, all of that is still fundamental to a solid, full functional BI platform. And that's, again, sort of the representation here, where you see all of those capabilities I was just describing that have been part of the Cognos platform for years and are still absolutely there. But we're now adding to that all of those new AI-based capabilities that I was just describing. So that gives you an idea of where we've taken the Cognos Analytics platform. But before I jump into the demo, there's a couple final little points I'd like to just add to this to understand where this fits into the concept of analysis in general. Because when we talk about data and analytics, it's not something we do simply for our own joy of it, though I'm sure some people quite enjoy it. There's a purpose to it for driving our business. And when we talk about the Cognos component of the analytics lifecycle, as we like to call it, that's really only two elements. That's the descriptive and the diagnostic that we look here on the right-hand side. But if you're doing analytics, whether you think about it or not, whether you're using a tool to do it or not, you're doing everything that you're seeing represented on the screen here. You're always going to start out with some sort of plan. Maybe it's a budget, maybe it's just an idea in your head that this is what I want to do, but there's a reason for you going down some road, and that is your plan. And once you have your plan established, you want to understand what happened after you've executed. It's one of the critical connections I always like to emphasize, that understanding what happened is meaningless unless you understand or know what you intended to happen or what you expected to happen. Because it's only with that comparison that you have a valid assessment as to whether you did good or bad. So critical connection between planning, descriptive, understanding why did it happen, and getting beyond just the basic reports. And we're going to get into that today to understand what might be driving your business. And then also the predictive and prescriptive in terms of what is likely to happen next. And that's where we can get into beyond Cognos Analytics, a lot of our predictive capabilities and prescriptive with our optimization engines and things like that. Again, you don't need everything here to do this, but the nice thing is once you're working with the Cognos and IBM platform, all of these types of capabilities are immediately available to you and intersect at what we call the AI ladder, because this goes beyond even the analytics lifecycle. IBM is really the only company out there that is offering what we consider the full stack of capabilities to address a transition to AI, which is what most organizations are trying to do. So whether you're talking about the foundational data layers, the information architecture that drives this, and the ability to organize that data, that's there. And then the analyze and infuse step, which is really a part of our data science and AI portfolio with IBM. And that's where the Cognos product sits, along with all of the other capabilities that I was just describing to address the analytics lifecycle. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out to broaden your thinking and understand that when we're looking at Cognos today, it absolutely can stand alone, and we've got a tremendous amount of AI built into it. But when you're in the IBM environment, you've got a tremendous amount of capabilities beyond Cognos to address all of these other needs as you make a transition to an AI-infused organization. So with that, Mark, I don't know if you had any questions coming in. I'm going to pause the presentation here for a moment and switch over to the demonstration screen. I'm just going to check my login here to make sure that it's still active. Looks like we're good. Okay, I'm not hearing any questions popping up, so I will continue. So the demonstration I'm going to give you today, again, it's not intended to, I'll give myself a little bit more screen here. It's not intended to show you every new feature. We've got other videos, you can go watch that. I really want you to understand the value of a few particular features, and again, in the context of why is this different? And that difference I'm focusing in on is why a dashboard is not really suitable for analysis, and why some of the capabilities we've now brought to the table in 11.1 really make it a much more compelling tool and product than a lot of the familiar dashboarding environments you may find out there in the marketplace. So what you're looking at here is the typical landing page of Cognos Analytics 11.1. And I'll just say that for those of you who've used Cognos quite some time, we've gone through a lot of design iteration in this product, particularly since the version 10 days, to make it much more easy, easy and consumable to the average business user. In particular, we've gotten rid of a lot of screen components that aren't used most of the time. We've made them available, but we've kind of hidden them a little bit just to make that stuff that you use 90% of the time readily accessible. So I'd encourage you to compare what you see today, again, to some of the other products out there that when I go back to them now, and I've used all of them for quite some time, their screens look very complex. There's a lot of stuff going on in them, and that can be intimidating and offer a little bit of a learning curve to the end user as they try to get started on something like that. So just keep that in mind as we go along with the overall experience here. Now, as I mentioned, I'm going to start this presentation from a dashboard perspective. I think that works well to help you offer a contrasting point to understand the value of some of the other things that I'm going to do. And I'm going to use a set of data that I have just in a spreadsheet, because again, this is something that's been driving a lot of the BI usage lately, is that people have their own data sets. They want to get it in a dashboard, and they want to do it quickly, and they don't want to do it without IT. And so I've got some data here that focuses in on some telco churn type of information. And I start with the question of, I just want to understand why our customers are staying customers. Pretty common question. As I drag it in, I'm given a few options here. The first is to create a data module. Again, I mentioned that earlier, the way I can right here within the web environment define a model that can be used by all of my organization to ensure that governance. Exploration, and that's the new part that I'm going to save for a little bit later. because as I said, I want to just start with a dashboard. So I drop it into the dashboard. Notice the top here, it's saying analyzing. This is that machine learning models kicking in and saying, okay, I'm not just going to load this data in. I want to find some things that are interesting about it. I want to find some patterns and correlations and a variety of things that I can use to surface up for the user, things that are statistically relevant. But again, for the moment, I just want to create a dashboard. If we're looking at why customers are staying with us, one of the things I may want to start with is just look at, see, okay, our different contracts control how long people are here. Let's grab our total charges to see how much money they're spending. I can simply drag that in. I'm given a chart like that. The machine learning automatically selects the best visualization for me. I could change it if I wanted to, but the point being, we learn based on the data types. We've taught it the best type to use. Now I only pick 2 data elements, so a bar chart is logically the best. And I could do other modifications to this, but the point here, that again, I wanted to just make sure anybody that thinks they're familiar with Cognos that hasn't seen it in a while, is from data to this dashboard took about 2 or 3 clicks. Drag, select it, put the data in, I'm done. And that's what people are often looking for nowadays. It's just that ability to construct the dashboard easily. So we can absolutely do that. But the other key point is why? Why do you want to do that if there's better ways of doing things? And the first way is, rather than focusing on this rather old paradigm of dragging and dropping things in, why not just start interacting with it in natural language in the way that you would expect a more modern tool to work? So we've added in 11.1 the assistant. And I'll mention that what you're going to see me use here, I'm going to use some fairly simple interactions. We've actually got a new release coming out in a couple weeks. Not allowed to show it to you just yet, but there's going to be a launch on July 9th, and we'll put a link up at the end of the webinar where you can register for it. And this in particular is one of the areas where we've made a lot of improvements in its ability to interact at natural language and do more filter conditions and aggregations, and just be able to recognize a lot more capabilities just through the natural language. But for now, I'll just show you some how it works today. So, you know, it's asking, how can I help you? Well, suppose I didn't have data. I just want to show you, for example, I might start this conversation, but show me the data I have access to. And then we'll go through and show me a variety of elements or data sources, both data as well as you know, models or framework manager packages. Basically anything that I have that might be used as a source of data would be made available to me. But again, let's just use what I've got here. I could ask it a question. Maybe I want to see the total charges, same thing I started it with, but I'm going to ask it, you know, for maybe something like our payment types, and I can just put in payment and it should recognize it. And we'll look at the contracts again. And when I make the selection of that question, it goes out, finds the data, and then offers up a selection of different chart types I could use. And again, this may be as far as I need. I may not even need to go put it on a dashboard. This just might be the flow of what I want to look at and ask some questions. And as I look around and I see maybe a chart that I like, though, I can say, okay, let's just drag that down. We'll add that in here. This happens to be one of my favorites, our new Marimekko chart, which is a fairly good chart for showing this type of combination, I think, in the distribution of these 3 data elements. But I also want to point out one other thing. You know, during the opening discussion, one of the things I really pointed out was the value of governed data and how that's been a standard rallying cry, if you will, about Cognos for many years, because it's really been shown to be a problem in organizations. People have data on their desktop, like I just did. They drag it into a dashboard. They start creating charts, like I just did. These look great. And again, if something looks good on a dashboard, it tends to have a level of believability, credibility, but it may be completely wrong. It may have some aspect to it that hasn't been vetted. Maybe they got a calculation wrong in that data. Maybe there's something that just that slipped by whoever created it. And that's the reason we want to have governed data. Now, here, in addition to it giving me the charts, it was able to find in the data I brought. Notice right here, this happens to be the icon for a data module. The user would learn that. And it says, hey, I found this same data. I can answer this question in this particular data model. You know, do you want to use that? I could click that and it would take me to that data model and start working from there. And that's really important because it gives that user a sort of a reinforcement of Okay, are you sure this data is good? Because if not, I've got something you can use. If I didn't know that was there, I may never recognize somebody had already looked at this data. It's right there, the system's telling me, guiding me. That's all of that, the smarts, as we call it, built in, helping me understand what I have available. So let's keep the analysis going here. Again, I'm building a dashboard here, trying to understand why people might be leaving my organization as a customer. So I've got information for tenure out there. Let's intersect that with contract and churn. And again, notice I'm using a slightly different, I can just type in the names of the columns and it will interpret what I might be looking for. I don't have to be explicit. And again, like on the previous one, I typed in payment. It knew that payment method was the best match for that. It figured that out. If it's got things that it can't quite discern, it will ask me, hey, can you clarify this? I'm not sure which one you want, or maybe it'll offer me a couple different options. So it guides and interacts with the user that way to ensure it gives what they're looking for. And as I look at this, I can say, I know this is a chart that I was looking for. It always ends up seemingly right at that point. So I'm going to drag that one over, and we've got this nice heat map. And with that, I've got sort of the beginning of a dashboard, right? That is sort of the type of things that I want to learn around, my tenure and the churn of my customers, how much money we have coming in. I could start doing some analysis, let's say. In fact, if I was going to share this, and I'm just going to jump forward a little bit, if I had a little more time and needed to share this out, we absolutely have the ability to make all this information very pretty. All the types of formatting changes that you would expect to deliver out a nice dashboard like this. Again, take me a little longer than the 15, 20 minutes I have in a demonstration, but it's fairly easy to do. And all of those capabilities are absolutely part of the product. It is fully interactive, so a user that's presented this can click on an element. It will adjust the rest of the data here, so I can drill down, drill through other ports. All of that capability is there. Now, but let's go back to our question. Why are people leaving? If I'm presented this dashboard, I can look at the things here, and in particular, if I see something like this word cloud over here, and I see things like competitors offering higher download speeds, and they got more data offered. This is obviously the results of some surveys that we did. Just based on this, I don't necessarily know how many people were in that survey, but immediately I'm starting to think, okay, I need to look at my network. Maybe there's stuff that's driving my network that are causing me to lose customers. If I did some improvements there, frankly, that could be a pretty expensive improvement, but hey, the data's telling me that our customers care about this. That's sort of what I was talking about, dashboards not necessarily being good for analysis. The reason this is here is that if somebody said, hey, we spent money to do some surveys, and this is some information that we found out, and we think it'd be valuable, and here you go. As a manager, I may or may not know just all the backstory on that. So but it's there. So if somebody decided it was reasonable, I think that's a problem. And frankly, we as Cognos think that's a problem, and saw that as a limitation of dashboards in general. Don't get me wrong. Dashboards are great for the purposes for which they do very well, which is presenting data like you see it here. But anytime I get data, I may have the ability or the need to go deeper and really want to understand what's doing. So let's take this example here. I had this on my dashboard. It's represented here. But if I really want to understand this intersection between our contracts and our churns and tenure, why not really explore it? And so what we've added, and I can get to this either through a dashboard, any element on this dashboard, this would appear, reports, as well as the starting point that I showed right when we started the demonstration. All of that is an area where I can jump into explore. And I'm just going to say, let's go to a new exploration around this data. So what it's done is jump me into this new, what I call a purpose-built user experience for exploration for data analysis. It's not intended to create a dashboard. It's meant to guide me through the process of really understanding and revealing to me all the things that are pertinent and really important about the question that I'm asking, in this case, tenure. How long are people talking or staying with me? Now, same chart. And as I look at this chart, again, a typical visualization, we just saw it on a dashboard, I can make some pretty good interpretations of the data just by looking at this, right? I can see, for example, that when a tenure is 2 year, that has the longest, or excuse me, contract's 2 year, that has the longest tenure. That kind of makes sense. But also, these people tend to churn, so maybe people are leaving right after they get a contract up or something to that nature. But look over here on the right-hand side. there's a set of information here, and this is all streaming from that analysis that it did when it loaded it in. When I loaded the data in, it started, as I said, doing that correlations and the predictive models and understanding, excuse me, the relationships between things. And with that, it ends up delivering something like this statement here. The value of tenure is unusually high when the contract is 2 years. This told me that it was high. This tells me that there's a statistical legitimate or specific or reason that this is a bit of an outlier. There's actually something going on here that may be more meaningful or impactful than just recognizing that it's high. Also, you start seeing things like the contract moderately drives the tenure. That is, there's a relationship there, that a correlation that is statistically relevant. And I emphasize that word because when you go back to the dashboard concept, a lot of times it's just something that's been studies done where correlations that show up on a dashboard visually correlating may have no statistical relevance at all between them. They just happen to be happening simultaneously, and there's no causality and no real relationship there. Here, the analysis is the correlations are being run through these models and provided access. Anytime I see a little green badge here, I can see and dig into those correlations. So for example, I can click on the first one here. It's going to take me to this driver analysis. And this is, again, a new visualization unique to us. It helps me understand by looking left to right what value, what element in my data or combination of elements have the most impact in terms of predicting what a total or tenure is going to be, how long people are going to stay with me. And you can see just variation here. If I select one of these in particular, it will show me, okay, these are the orange is a 2-driver combination, and I can see a visualization as a preview of some of the things that are going on there. And you can see there's a number of combinations. And the reason we do 1, 2 in combination is that sometimes you may find a single driver that has a high impact, and that might be easier to affect in your business to make a change than trying to address a lot of drivers. But for the purposes of the demo, I want to illustrate just the richness of working with combinations and how we present that out. So I click on that preview. It takes me into the analysis, the tree diagram that I'm looking at here. It shows me, okay, when I'm looking at tenure, the first thing that's most important is the total charges, and then we get into the other thing. Well, think about total charges and tenure. I actually said that kind of at the beginning, right? The longer somebody's with me, the more money they're going to give me. It's really kind of self-evident. And that's an important point for analysis, because a lot of times there's things that I need to be able to understand and interact with this in a way to address elements like that. So the ability to edit the drivers and very quickly, easily select or deselect things that I wanted to consider. In this case, we're going to get rid of total charges, because I know that's a self-evident kind of connection. It's going to rerun the model and say, okay, with that out of the picture, now, here are the things. Contract is the most important. Again, fairly self-evident, but again, I think it's important because that's part of my business. But as I look at these next layers, I start seeing some different things turn up. And in particular, here at the top, let's see if I can get it to show me there, I see the partner. Now, this is something that hasn't shown up anywhere so far, that when I have a partner involved, it has some impact. In fact, I can take this to the next step. We offer what we call related diagrams. This is going to show me a variety of things. Okay, if you're looking at tenure, here's some other jumping off points. And in fact, here's one that shows me tenure and partner. So from there, I jump into this diagram and reveal something kind of compelling. The fact that my tenure on average is about twice as long when I've got a partner involved with my business than when I don't. Just think about the simplicity of that element of my business and how I can interact and make changes and deal with my partners. That's something I can affect. And here's something that's showing kind of a broad spectrum that this is a big impact. Now, pause here just for a second. I've been jumping through this analysis, and maybe you've noticed here on the left-hand side, creating these different, what we refer to as cards. Again, this is built to help guide me through an analysis. So rather than me having to think about what I'm going to put on a dashboard and how I'm going to lay it out, it's simply keeping it track for me. So I can follow the train of thought. And at any point in time, I can go back to any point in my analysis and say, okay, what did I see there? Let me go look over here. I can move back and forth very seamlessly within the analysis. And at any point in time, anything I see here that I want to bring over to my dashboard, simple copy paste, and we bring it over there, and I'll show you that a little bit later. Now, let's continue our analysis. So I know that my partners are important, and what I really want to understand, I've been looking at contracts, I've been looking at my charges, how much money I have coming in. I kind of want to bring that all together to understand what happens when I have a partner involved to all that versus when I don't have a partner involved to all that. And a comparison. Comparisons are a large percentage of the type of analysis people want to do. So we decided, let's make comparisons easy. First of all, I'm gonna go back to my assistant, because I want to point out that the assistant is immediately available within the Explore experience, just like it is within the dashboards. And let's go back to the sort of the question we were looking at before as well. I'm going to go back to total charges, and I'm going to, in this case, do it by tenure and contract, a little bit different. And it's going to give me visualizations here. Now, at this point, I want to kind of switch gears a little bit, because everything I've been showing you illustrated how the visualizations and the AI, everything can be guided by the Cognos Analytics Explore experience. But we recognize still that the ability to take control and start doing things a little bit more manually absolutely is necessary. Because sometimes you want to just get a little more granular in your control and work with the things that you want to see. So let's do that in this case. So I just started with this one. It was the first one that came up, but I'm going to switch it over and turn it into a column chart. Now, notice even here, again, I can't emphasize enough how we've been trying, how do we make things easy? So the first thing right here is the recommended visualizations. This is going to say, you know what, based on all the machine learning models and the type of data you're working with, these are probably some things that would be really good ways of looking at the data. But beyond that, here are all the ways that you can, other visualizations. Now, rather than just saying, okay, here's a list, we said, how do people analyze data? You know, do they compare data? Do they look at parts to a whole? Do they look at trends? And organize it so that I can make a selection based on my purpose. And in this case, I want to do a comparison, and I'm going to just switch back to a column chart, because I also want to illustrate how easy it is to interact with things and change it. So in addition to the details where I had all the rich natural language, I've got the granular control that you expect in a visualization, whether it's on a dashboard or a report or anything like that. And I can move things around. So let's say I wanted to take tenure, I'm going to move that down to the color just to change our view here a little bit. And then all the data that I've been working with is here. So I'm going to drag my partner into a filter, and let's tell it that we want that to be no. So this is going to be the first view we have. So when partners are not involved, month to month is the highest in terms of the total charges, and it shrinks after that. We also want to compare that to when we have a partner. So what we can do is just simply duplicate this. And now I've got one that is the same thing, but we're going to change the filter real quick here and make that yes. Actually, let's just change it to invert there. And now we've got the reverse. And in fact, I can see the inverse itself. We've got it where now when a partner's involved, we've got about the absolute opposite chart. And this is, a valid comparison, right? We can see, this chart versus that chart, and I can switch back and forth maybe between them, or I put them on a dashboard maybe and put them side by side. That would look good, right? But I like to point out this one too, because it's a really critical issue that happens a lot of times with dashboards. Look at the scale. This one is at 26 or 2.6 million. This one is at 5 million. That's a big difference in terms of what this data is actually saying. But a dashboard is going to want to make this visually fill up the space as best as it can. So unless I catch that, unless I notice that those scales are different, I could look at visually and make a completely wrong interpretation of what this data is telling me. So comparisons are important. Let's do it right. We take the two cards here, simply say compare, and I'll mention this is something we actually made easier in the release you'll see on July 9th if you sign into that. We recognize first cut, we thought we had it right. I think most of the way we got it right, but we decided we wanted to make it even easier. So we've added a few little changes to it that it definitely does the trick. But notice here what I'm looking at now. Look at the difference in these charts when we put them on the same scale, and I can actually see, using the line here, compare the two. If I make a selection on one of these and on the other, if I just wanted to compare month to month, I get a rich set of additional data down here that I can start making comparisons and still have access to all the data slots. So if I wanted to start intersecting other things, making changes to again, understand what's going on with my business with a partner involved and what's not, because we've kind of identified that as something that's important for our business. I could keep going. I think you're starting to get the idea, though, of how this experience is really different from a dashboard, and using the AI, it guides me through the process of finding that information that I really wouldn't have thought about. Because then, let's just pop back over here for a second. You know, I had this beautiful dashboard here. There's nothing on here that had anything to do with partners. If I were just using this to run my business, and just based on whoever created this, or I created it myself, and I may never have known to go consider my partner relationships when I'm considering my churn. You know, hopefully I would have. I know that's a little bit contrived, but I think the point is still valid. That you know, if it wasn't something as maybe self-evident as partners, it could have been something else. It could have been something really buried under the covers that nobody had ever thought of. And that's really the point I'm trying to get to. Now, as we wrap this up, I'm gonna go back over to the exploration. The last thing I wanted to illustrate is going all the way back to the beginning when I dragged that data in. And instead of starting with a dashboard, one of the places that offered me to start was an exploration. Had I done that, if I dragged it into that spot, it would have given me this view. This is a relationship diagram of the strength of the relationships between the data elements in my data set. It identifies up here what it considers the most interesting fields. These are typically going to be measures like you see here, churn or monthly charges or tenure, which is what we've been looking at. So had I come in and just loaded in the data, said go to explore, I'm interested in tenure, click on that, it shows me the relationship. And you know, as I start interacting with this view, I can say, well, okay, show me some information about tenure. So I can see, okay, here's my total tenure, here's the some of these things that we're looking at in charts. And as I add elements to, by control clicking different things here, it gives me previews of intersections and visualizations I can look at. So I'm doing analysis right here. I'm starting to understand things better. And if I consider those relationship strengths, you know, immediately something that's relatively strong here is the partners, and I can click on that. And you know, the same sort of thing that we eventually got to, I might very quickly get to here. And then if I want to start that same sort of analysis, I simply click on one of these, it opens up the card for me. I start seeing all of that same information over here that we were looking at. If I found this meaningful, I could simply do a Control-C, drop back over into my dashboard and start sharing this with other people. I'm just going to open a new tab here. And we'll paste that in. So now I've got that discovery, that exploration result that I did, that I found through real exploration, through stuff that was supported by statistics and predictive models, and not just me thinking, hey, this looks interesting and it looks really cool on the dashboard, so it must be right. There's validation here, and I think that's really the important part. So I think that with that, I've gone through the key things in this demonstration. You know, I mentioned on when we're starting some of the other elements, and I'll just mention for the existing Cognos clients that are on the call here. You know, the preparation step with the ability to work within data modules. We've got other demonstrations on the web that we could that you can look up on that. But in particular, one of the things I like to point out with that one is the ability to do relative time periods, something that everybody wants to do, right? I've got data for this year. I want to compare it to last year, this month versus last year, this month, you know, year over year, quarter over quarter. It amazes me that literally, and I'm not exaggerating here, with about 3 clicks in the data, we provide calendars that you connect to your measure, and it will immediately give you a full array of relative time periods that you can bring into your dashboards and reports. So that's a great example of just how easy we've made it for the business user to get the data elements that they need to really do the analysis. And then for those of you that may be familiar with Report Studio, our traditional environment for building the more managed reports, pixel perfect as we call them, we made a lot of advances in that as well, in terms of being able to just do sort of the same sort of drag drop that you saw me doing in the dashboard. So wherever I drop it, that's where it lands. I can size it, and all of those little details in the property sheets that you may have had to modify before with typing in numbers. All of that can be done just through drag and drop and sizing on the screen. It just made a much richer experience to get that baseline layout up and running, and then you can tweak it. Absolutely, all the power is still there behind the scenes to adjust it to the level of specificity that you need. But just some nice advances we made in doing that. So with that, I think that kind of wraps up the demo. I'm going to pop back over just to the slides just for one more moment and just share a couple things here. People are always looking for feedback on this. This information can be found out on the web as well if you go out to IBM.com on our page. But just you can read some of the quotes here that we've had. I was actually part of a team that did a early adopter program for some of our partners, and the reactions we got from them were just fantastic. They were so excited to see some of the changes that we made in 11.1. So we're very excited to take this forward again. And just I'm going to, as I turn it over to Mark, and let's start looking at some of the questions here. I'll paste into the chat the registration page for the video, or excuse me, for the webinar on the 15th for the new launch, and you'll be able to see some of the other new great capabilities we have coming out. So Mark, what's going on the question side? I haven't had a chance to look in on that.
A few questions came up. They're pretty good. I answered one or two of them. Maybe you can confirm. The version you're displaying now, demoing now, is that 11.1.2?
It is, yes.
All right, perfect. Another question, which is actually a pretty common question, is maps. Everybody are really concerned with maps, and everybody likes maps. Anything that's new in this version and maybe coming out soon that we can share?
Well, we're constantly evolving maps. I mean, one of the big changes we made was shift over to the Mapbox engine that drives all of our mapping capabilities. So they're constantly been, evolved, and the ability to do things like lassoing had been introduced. I think that was in 11.1 originally. So we're always making them better. I don't know if there was a specific question around what we're doing with maps, but I don't know. The simple answer is yeah, we're always trying to make them better. I know one of the things we are looking at going forward is, and see if I get the right term here, but making customizable maps that aren't reliant on just geo type of location, right? So mapping a stadium, let's say, or a engine, anything that you might visually want to create to have some sort of location associated with the data. That is something we're working on, not in the product just yet.
Okay. Another question just popped up is dynamic cube support. Is it going to be supported in the future? Now, I know that it's supported now, but I know that the cloud it's not supported.
Yeah, correct. So dynamic cubes are something we're working on cloud support. I have to be honest, there's a lot of new things coming in the cloud support on the 15th. Off the top of my head, I just don't remember if dynamic cubes are on that list or not. But it absolutely is on the list to do, whether it gets into this release or not. The other thing just to recognize is some of the OLAP technologies, just full transparency, a lot of the smarts capabilities that we built in, and again, you saw it apply to the data that that I dragged into the UI. If you want to apply that to your existing data or bigger data sets, that absolutely can happen as well. So if you have a framework manager package, you can tell it to go out and analyze that and build all of its smarts again to answer the types of questions through the AI and the natural language, et cetera. The OLAP sources aren't quite supported with that yet. That is something we're looking at, but there are workarounds for that as well in using data sets and things. So.
Okay. Other interesting question. Somebody said they know that Cognos supports a lot of different databases, and it pretty much connect to anything and everything in my experience. They wanted to know if there was a preferred data source or model type or database size. From my experience, I've seen everybody use anything and everything. So I don't know if they would be considered a preferred.
No, we don't. I mean, the neat thing about it is that we design our SQL engine, so anything we're doing within the models, right, gets translated back to a SQL query that's going to be passed out to the data source, whatever that source may be. And I use SQL kind of generically because some of those I recognize are not necessarily SQL sources. but call it a query, right? But we optimize that. So if you're connected to Oracle, we're going to generate SQL that's optimized for Oracle. If you're using DB2, we're going to optimize it for DB2, and it goes like that through pretty much any of the native sources we have. Some of the less smaller sources we might be using ODBC or JDBC or something like that. That may not be quite as optimized, but it absolutely will work.
Yeah, I mean, in my experience, my recommendation is faster is always better than slower when it comes to data sources.
Yes.
Make sure it's big enough to fit all your data. So.
And that's a good point, Mark, too, that when people are looking, because they're always asking about databases, the sort of the implied question is which one's fastest, right? So, and the thing you have to remember there is a couple things that you need to think about is, a lot of times, depending on what you're doing, OLAP sources can be very fast, but we also, how is the data being cached? We do a lot of caching. If you haven't experimented with data sets yet, definitely take a look at those, because a lot of times it might make sense to go ahead and pull the data sets into Cognos Analytics for certain purposes to get that lightning fast response versus relying on the original data source. But the last point is, I always like to emphasize this, look at your models. The quality of your framework manager or your data module model is going to have a big impact on how fast that performs against the database. And so if you're just looking at something that's like, why is this going slow? Just do a little investigation there. Overall, as well as find out there, is it passing something into the, or is it doing something locally? Let's say that it should pass to the database, and it might just be a real simple tweak in that model to push something out to the database and get huge performance improvements.
And from a data set point of view, I know that 11.1 has definitely had a lot more enhancements from data sets. Yes. So people using them in 11.0. whatever, that's one of the features that IBM has definitely made some mass improvements to over the iterations. Another question that popped up too is about layering within maps. Currently, you can create your own custom layers, but you have to go to a Mapbox, website. The person wants to know if you'd be able to do that directly in Cognos and not have to go to Mapbox still.
I don't know the answer to that one. We might have to take that one back to back to development. I know I've heard some stories talking about layers, but I don't know the answer off the top of my head.
Yeah, but just so everybody knows, if you want a customized layer, example would be maybe if you have regions instead of generic regions like Northeast, you have actual company-specific regions. You can very easily go to Mapbox and create your own regions and assign different analytics and different values to those regions that are customized specifically for you. That's just one example of your customized layers that you can do.
Well, I'm trying to see, maybe I can put in the questions. Let's see. I was trying to put that link mark up in the, but for some reason the chat is only letting me send to organizers, so I don't know if everybody can see it or not. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to, let's see.
No, I see it.
Okay, yeah, you can see it, but you're an organizer, so, and I don't
yeah, but I'll send it to everybody.
Okay, if you can do that, that'd be great. I can put it on the screen, but it's not going to help you much if you can't click on it, right? There you go. I think that got it. That will actually take you to the page where you can RSVP and get the link to come to the webinar on the 9th and see some of the great new things that we're releasing. And as the title of that, you'll see when you get there, one of the exciting things is we're making lighter weight versions available on our multi-tenant cloud so that you'll actually be able to get into Cognos for as little as $15 a month. So that is something that our customers sometimes have wanted compared to, let's just call it, some of the other guys out there that offer very inexpensive offerings, but maybe are quite a bit more limited than what we can do with Cognos at that price point.
Another question just popped up, had to do with collaboration, probably a terminology thing, but notice collaboration existed in Cognos 10. When you talk about collaboration in Cognos Analytics, we're talking about a different collaboration technology, correct?
Yeah, so we started working down the road of collaboration in 10 and realized that it made no sense for us to really build our own collaboration platform inside Cognos. So the shift in gears, as we move particularly into 11.1 is how do we open it up to the dominant collaboration platforms that are already in place. Most notably with the first release, 11.1 was Slack. So fully integrated with Slack now, and you can do a lot of things with that. I don't have a demonstration available to show that. I think there might be some out on our website to show some of the details around that. But we can continue to make that more open. And in general, I'll just say that is one of the directions that we have is how can we continue to make Cognos Analytics more open and accessible to do the types of things that people want to do outside of the CAUI, right? The Cognos Analytics user interface, either through APIs or things like the collaboration, easier interaction with Mapbox. All of those things are absolutely high on our roadmap.
Great. Another question popped up about a link to the videos for the customer feedback that you had on the last slide. So is there a link available for that?
I should have thought that. They are absolutely out on our IBM website, and I will see if I can find them real quick. But it may take me a minute.
That's all right. At the end of this, we're going to send everybody the slide deck. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to us directly. But slide deck, we're actually going to have the video posted online as well, and we'll email, whatever links are required in that response at the end. So that shouldn't be a problem.
So, yeah, I'm not able to find it real quick. So let's just plan on making it available through the deck.
Yeah, not a problem. All right, we're getting close to the end of the hour here. Any other questions? We had a few good ones. Do we know when the next iteration is going to be released?
July 9th.
July 9th. Excellent.
Yeah, that's what we call the .3. So 11.1.3 will release that.
All right, give you something fun to do after the holidays. What's the best way to help business users make the move from 10 to 11, training docs, etc.? Actually, I have a lot of experience with this. I recommend a couple different things. One of the things I usually do is I usually do a lot of 1 hour little company internal webinars, because a lot of times it's the interface that they're not really used to as much, but the products and the actual reports themselves are really in the same location. I equate it to kind of going from an old version of Microsoft Office to the new version where they have the ribbon at the top. It was very awkward in the beginning, but once you started getting used to it, you found out that it was much better than what it was before. And that's kind of the experience I've seen from everyone going from 10 to 11 Cognos Analytics. So I recommend that. Sometimes a 1 or 2 page cheat sheet or even a small slide deck is a cheat sheet. But that's usually kind of where I start. Also, what's nice too is there's actually a link right on the home page that takes you to IBM's YouTube channel, and that has a lot of little videos on how to do different things. And they're great because they're not hour-long videos. It's 3 minutes here, 4 minutes here, maybe 5 minutes here, and it helps users just kind of create their first dashboard or create their first report. But I've noticed that just little things like that are really all you need to get people going from the 10 world to the 11 world. So
I agree with everything you're saying there. I'll mention also, if you haven't been out to the new Cognos Analytics community, and again, it can be reached through IBM.com, there's a lot of new information. You're seeing a lot more blogs, a lot more discussions. We're really trying to build out this community to be more interactive and supportive of the clients. And so I encourage you to take this, take a look at this as well as get involved and start answering questions. So this can give you jumping off points to a lot of the new information that you're learning there or you're talking about.
Have more properties been added to visualizations similar to other vendors? I guess that's towards the dashboarding.
Sorry, I missed the whole question there, and I'm not seeing that.
Sounds like it. If my personal experience, every iteration has added more and more features to the visualizations in dashboarding, and 11.0 to 11.1 was a big jump for that. So there was definitely a ton of things that were added. So 11.1.1 and obviously now 11.1.2 and in 2 weeks 11.1.3, they're constantly being added to, and your experience with dashboards in the 11.1 world is, in my opinion, way more impressive than it was in the 11.0 world. Not that that was a bad experience, but from a flexibility and a functionality point of view, I think 11.1 definitely took it to the next level. Yeah,
agreed. And being able to do custom visualization is something we want to absolutely, it's on the roadmap as well. In addition to all the ones that we're bringing out, the ability to allow people to create their own visualizations easily without having to know, fancy code, that's something we want to get to as well.
Yeah, visualizations are important to you and dashboards are important to you, and you're on 11.0 anything, go to 11.1, 1, 2, or 3 as soon as it comes out. I think your experience will be much better. Again, not that it was bad before, but it's almost like when I first used it, it's almost like they took my entire to-do list and somebody just checked off all the boxes. I'm like, I wish I could do this, and then it was there. I wish I could do this, and then it was there. I think it'll check off all your boxes. Yep, so definitely make sure you're in the 11.1 world. So, great, so we're at about 2 o'clock now. Any other questions? I think we're good.
All right.
Would you like to say, Michael?
Nope, I think that's it. Thanks everyone for joining. Hopefully you found it informative, and hopefully you realize why I'm so excited about this release. And again, in a couple of weeks, I'm excited about the things we've got coming out there as well, because it's just going to push us even further ahead.
One other question that popped up is, are there any pieces missing from 10? In my experience, there's nothing in 10 that doesn't exist or can be done in Cognos Analytics. Somebody mentioned a manager. I know there's Event Studio is still around. The only thing that seems to be gone is Metric Studio, but that was not a very popular product to start with.
Right.
And so that's technically not supported. But is there anything you had before in the 10 world, it seems to show up now in 11? The things in the beginning weren't there, like shortcuts, views and that kind of stuff, but that all comes over now. It's amazing how everything kind of just comes over from 10 to the 11 world.
Yeah.
I think it's great for users to kind of get in for that phase one, just doing what they did in 10 in the new platform, and then start adding all the new features. So, but great. I really appreciate all your time, Michael. Hopefully it was beneficial for everyone. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. We will be sending out a link to the video and slide deck and answers to some of the questions that came up as well, along with a few valuable links. And that's it. Thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it.